Hello team and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan at MS Pierce. This is a belated Frontline update for yesterday. This does not include the fighting that has taken place today, which is the 12th of March. Today is the 12th of March. This is a roundup of yesterday, so I'm sorry that I'm late. This will almost certainly be out of date, but tomorrow I'll give you the update to what has happened today much sooner than today's one. So I do apologize, but it is what it is. If you watch this, hey. If you don't, meh. But thank you if you do. Kupiansk to Svatova to Kremlin is where we're going to go to first. So Kupiansk here, Svatova just a little bit further down south there. Now, there has been a little bit of this Svatova, a little bit of movement here. So what do we know? Let's try and do this really quickly. Apparently, the Russians have done some counterattacks, unsuccessful counterattacks around Hranikivka and Metyutivka, which is around about there. It's not rendering at the moment, but it's somewhere around there. They have been doing some attacks there, but have not succeeded. And as we come further down south, interesting note from ISW saying that geolocated footage shows that Persia Travnevi is likely in Russian hands, but that has been the case for about, I don't know, a couple of months. But we take lines on a map for granted, but things are dynamic, and actually there isn't necessary proof. Like, it can be that there are certain towns around here that might be, like, scare quotes, controlled by a certain side, but there might not actually be any army there, any armed forces operating in that village, but it is within the lines, and it's and there isn't geolocated provable footage that it is. And so occasionally, even though you've had it safely under the control of a certain side, some kind of bit of information will come out once in a while. It says Persia Travnevi, in this case, that is under the control of the Russians, just to let you know. FYI, that kind of thing. So that was what the ISW, I thought that was interesting to pick that out. They've also said Ukrainian sources reported that Ukrainian forces have advanced towards Svatova. A Ukrainian media source reported on March 11th, that's yesterday, that Ukrainian forces entered Kuzmivka on an unspecified date and now hold positions 11 kilometers away from Svatova. Now, this is very important. Kuzmivka is this town that they've been fighting over for some time. Novoselivska to the west is on the heights here. Ukraine took that, then it was kind of flattened, and Russia took it back. Then Ukraine took it back, and have been trying to take Kuzmivka for a long time, for several weeks now. And they have some kind of presence in the west of the town as it goes down a slope downwards. It could be that Ukraine now have greater presence there. It could be that they've taken it. It could be that that's not true. I'm not sure, 100%. We'll see, but there have been, I think, Deep State map shows a slight change in the territory in this area, so they are reflecting that claim. That is important for obviously taking Svatova. If that's going to be one of their intentions for a counteroffensive in the spring, I don't know. As we come further down south, not a lot of talk. I mean, there are claims of certain places to get the usual place on the daily report. Nevska, obviously Kremina, Shpina, Budorivka further down south, but not too much mention of elsewhere. But Chervona Popivka is mentioned, not by ISW, but actually by Null Reports, as a pro-Ukrainian blogger, says the AFU has improved its positions near Chervona Popivka. Russian forces keep getting bogged down in strong defensive position towards Torska to the west and the Kremina Forest to the south. No positional changes in either direction. Russian troops continue to attack Belorivka without success. So Chervona Popivka, there is some gain, as according to Null Reports. I haven't changed my map, but there is a slight change, I think, on Deep State, possibly to reflect that, but certainly something to look out for. The Russians, remember, it appears that this is one of the places where they are putting on their major offensive, and if the Ukrainians are making some minor gains in several places, then I don't know what that says about the Russian offensive. Well, I do know what it says. It's a complete anticlimax. So the question is this really their offensive? And this is a question I keep asking every single damned update, which is this really the Russian offensive? Because it is. If it is, it's just a bit crap. And if it's not, what are they doing? What are they doing throwing a bunch of stuff into here that's not an offensive, but is a bit of an offensive, and it looks like it's just an excuse to trip their own forces, which puts them in a poorer position if they are actually going to do offensive. So it must be the offensive, but then this is just rubbish. So anyway, if this is all they can muster in the area, then it's not looking great going forward. Their successes seem to be really focused on Bakhmut. Repelled attacks, Bilorivka, Spirna, coming down to Rostelivka, Vesele. And then I'm trying to be really quick, so I do apologize, or you might actually really like that. So, hey, we get on to the north of Bakhmut. North of Bakhmut here is concerning Orikova Vasilivka, Dubova Vasilivka, which is now definitely under control of the Russians. I think, is it Igor Gherkin has said that Orikova Vasilivka is under control of the Russians, but that is not everyone agrees with that. I'm going to go to just show you a little bit of what ISW does mention Chevron Pivka there, counterattack, and that's from a Russian mill blogger as well, claiming that the Ukrainian forces counterattacked near there. Anyway, to come on down south to Bakhmut, Russian mill bloggers claim that Wagner Group forces crossed the Bakhmutka River in eastern Bakhmut and are moving towards the city centre. Geolocated footage of Wagner Group financier Prigozhin shows that he is about 1.5 kilometers away from the administrative centre. Several Russian mill bloggers notably claim the Ukrainian forces are preparing for a counterattack in Bakhmut. So that is basically the stuff that isn't just repelled attacks here. So, I can mention all of these places: Zalesnetsky, Dubova Vasilivka, so on and so forth. They're all mentioned, Ivanivka, Bodanivka, etc., etc. Now, what I'm going to do is just to give you an idea. So that there is claims about what's going on in northwest here. Interestingly, I increased this area as according to several pro-Ukrainian sources yesterday, a mixture of null reports and deep state, who didn't quite agree on exactly where. One said there were gains here, one said there were gains here, so I put gains in both. Syriac Maps is a pro-Russian mapper, has stated that there are gains in just to the edge of that kind of forested gully area there, which I already have under control of the Russians. So the Russians have at least that, it would seem. It depends which mapper you go to. There's quite a few, confusing claims. But anyway, let's just go to what Syriac, is a pro-Russian mapper, does quite a lot of analysis on Bakhmut and Avdiivka. So I'm going to read you through what they say, because I think it's interesting to see from their point of view what's going on. So situations, do I go to south first? I don't know which way around. Yes, I will. So sorry, this is actually going to south first. So situation south of the city, Russian army advanced in Budanivka district and took control over most of Mariupolska cemetery. So just to let you know, down the south there's this cemetery, and they are advancing through there. Now the Bakhmutka River is further to the I'll show you on my map here. Sorry, I know there's confusion flipping around everywhere. So you've got the river down here, and the cemetery area is down here that they are making advances. I've left my Ukrainian lines there just to give you an indication of where the advances took place. So all around this area, and they seem to control the Russians now, the complete cemetery. There's also some gains according to some. So Deep State map has the Russians actually gained a little bit more just on that tiny bridgehead there, if you can call it that. It's just blocks of urban environment. Over the past few days, there have been talk of Ukraine's near defeat in Bakhmut. However, this claim, even from NATO-linked media, is probably premature, as there is a strong possibility that the battle will drag on into April. The reason for thinking this way is to do with Kyiv's decision to continue defending the city, an objective that is primarily political, and it is intended to force an outcome similar to that of Mariupol, in which Ukrainian forces confronted the Russian offensive in Azovstal, in this case the Azov plant. But it is also a strategic objective, and this is so. I was wondering when I originally read this that Syriac Maps would be going on, it's just political, and it's not. But actually, there is strategic, or at least tactical reason. Well, actually, strategic to really trip the Russian forces in general before a counterattack. You might say operational. Anyway, sorry. And it is to gain time, and not only to strengthen the next line of defense, but also to allow new units to arrive at the front, many of them from the reserve and territorial defense groups. Moreover, to promote the attrition war on Russian troops to slow down the Russian offensive momentum in the Donbass, similar to what happened with Lysychansk. The movement of these groups alongside those already present in Bakhmut for months raises the possibility of a Ukrainian counteroffensive in the region, a military operation that would include the unblocking of the semi-siege to the city and the recovery of territory lost since September 2022. which, if successful, would allow penetration of Russian defences up to the 2014 front line. Russian troops appear to be aware of this situation and have begun to focus much more on expanding the northern and southern axes of the city with the aim of increasing their buffer zone to deal with a significant counterattack, while troops continue to exert pressure on urban districts where advances are slow and costly, as well as monitor Ukrainian troop movements on supply routes. On the other hand, attention should also be paid to the latest movements on the southern fronts where Ukrainian forces are building up in the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast and the rear of Zaporizhia, a large part of which are also territorial defense groups alongside the recently mobilized forces. The recent partial Russian success in the east has accelerated the preparation of the new Ukrainian units, which suggests that although a Ukrainian counteroffensive in Zaporizhia is not yet possible, as both the old units and the new foreign material is not ready, it is quite possible that we will see an upsurge in fighting in the region with the aim of diverting Russian resources from the east of Zaporizhia. As noted above, the Ukrainian side's priority seems to be to buy time until late spring or early summer. And I think that's a sort of fair assessment of what's going on. What I was wondering as well recently is whether I genuinely think mines and defenses, like entrenched defenses and dragon's teeth, in combination with whole swathes of mines, will cause problems for Ukrainian counteroffensives. And I wonder whether it makes sense, and there'll be military strategists out there that know damn sight more than I do, to attack in places where the Russians are already attacking. Because the Russians won't have mined all around here because they're actively moving all around here. They'll be blowing themselves up, right? Mines are defensive. So where Russia is on the attack, on the offense, they won't have mined. So if you're looking for a good place to do a massive counterattack, here would be, at least at the moment, if the Russians weren't prepared for it, then actually counterattacking there and forcing yourself, behind through attacking through the if the Russians culminate here and run out of momentum and exhaust themselves and haven't mined here, then that's potentially, if you could do it quick enough, get there quick enough and supply this whole area. But of course, the Russians would know what was coming. They would see this in advance. But in principle, that could be a good place to attack, rather than sort of attacking up. For example, if you're thinking about up further up north, where they've mined everywhere behind here, this is all like completely defensively sorted out here. And then if you suddenly decide, well, we're going to attack through Svatova, really slow going, because actually you're having to get your breaching equipment in place and demine all these places as you are trying to attack, and it becomes a very difficult and time costly affair. So I don't know, it's just a thought. But anyway, back to Bakhmut itself. And we'll go back to Syriac maps, actually, because they do have some more to say. That situation north of Bakhmut city took full control over the hills adjacent to the town of Orokovo. Vasilivka reports about the capture of the town are premature. So that's interesting. So this is going back to the idea that Igor Gherkin has said that this settlement here, Orokovo Vasilivka, is under control of the Russians. Syriac maps are saying that's premature, but there are advances that have been made around there. So if we go to Null Reports, let's have a really quick look at what Null Reports says of Bakhmut. Sorry, just got to go the right way. Right, north of Bakhmut, Russian troops have made progress in the area east of Orokovo Vasilivka. Igor Gherkin claims that the entire village has already been taken. This is not yet the case, but Russian troops have the upper hand, fighting on the outskirts of Bodanivka continues. So again, that kind of confirms what Syriac maps are saying and what I was just saying then. And then to the front line, start with Bakhmut. So this is, I've been going backwards, sorry. Fighting continues in northern and southern parts of Bakhmut. There is no new information about positional changes. So Null Reports doesn't have positional changes, but other mappers do, and I've adapted Bakhmut in line with that, which is some gains around the cemetery area and to the south. The claims that that the Russians have crossed the river, I said that from Syrian maps yesterday, and ISW is talking about this. I don't know whether there's actually any permanent foothold to the west of the river for the Russians. I doubt it. I mean, if there is, goodness me, that's already this natural barrier breach, and that would be a real problem for the Ukrainians, because that you would imagine is going to be one of their main like defensive features of their defense of Bakhmut. Nothing to be said particularly about the south and southwest. Although Poulet-Vallon's map does have, I mean, it looks pretty difficult, tough going for the Ukrainians here. A lot of land taken to the northeast, northwest here, but they have the mapping on this kind of bend of the canal down the south. So they actually have the Russians closer to the T0504 highway here than I do, but matter of hundreds of meters. I don't know if that's particularly important. They don't have a signified gain there for the Russians, but just a difference in mapping. So that's what they have in for Bakhmut. But yeah, as I say, not too much information for the south. Right, as we come out of Bakhmut, again, not too much I can say more than I have. Poulet-Vallon as a mapper has some gains for the Ukrainians around Mayorsk. So just to remind you, you got Bakhmut, Klishchivka, Kurdimivka, Ozornivka, and then as we come towards New York, Sumy, Toretsk, we have Mayorsk here, which was a sort of rail station hub or junction that took some time for the Russians to take, and they haven't actually advanced too far since then. Poulet-Vallon seems to have them pushed back, but broadly speaking, down the railway line, that's where I've had them anyway. So I don't know. I have moved it slightly over the last few days, so that they have been pushed back, as according to Deep State Map as well, around here. But the reason I showed this map is because, hey, it's a rare bit of yellow, a rare yellow arrow, and a rare yellow region that has been retaken. So if you're pro-Ukrainian, that's a bit of a hurrah for you there. As we pop down further, we come towards Avdiivka. Looks very similar to Bakhmut, with the attempts for the Russians to encircle the settlement from the north and from the south. Activity all around here. Quite a lot of activity to the north, and there are claims that Krasnohorivka has been taken. I've not changed my map at all. I just want to wait. I'm being a little bit cautious. There are several people claiming that Krasnohorivka is either partially or completely been taken, and that they are advancing on Kamyanka as well. Poulet-Vallon's map, let's have a look here. So as you can see, they don't have Krasnohorivka taken yet, and in fact quite far away from Kamyanka as well. We go to Null Reports, who talks about Avdiivka. In Avdiivka, Deep State Map claims that the Russian forces managed to grab a foothold in Krasnohorivka, so Deep State does have this. While I think Deep State is credible, I would need visual confirmation of this claim, as Russia tried numerous times to take this town, and it's an important position in the rear of Avdiivka. And I'm going to just go back to Syriac Maps, because they've got quite a lot to say on Avdiivka as well. So they claim that Krasnohorivka has been taken. So Russian army and DPR managed to break the defenses of the Ukrainian army, taking control over most of Krasnohorivka town and reach the northern outskirts of Kamyanka, where clashes and with Ukrainian forces are taking place. The latest Russian successes in the Avdiivka front are related to the arrival of new Russian army units on the front line in February, including new mobilized troops, and this has been a major boost to the forces stationed there that have borne the brunt of the operation to try to encircle the city. Now, if you remember, loads of complaint videos from Mobix have been from this area, saying that the DPR have been sending them in as the cannon fodder, and they're supposed to be territorial defense, not used for this and not trained for that. However, they're doing it anyway. So irrespective of how up for it they are, that seems to be what's going on. The Donbass militiamen, DPR forces, are already seems to be a clear commitment from the Russian side to take this large Ukrainian stronghold, which would mean a significant reduction in shelling of Donetsk city. So Donetsk does get shelled, and there are places in Donetsk that are hit on a nightly basis and a daily basis, and that is the Ukrainians are able to do this by being obviously closer. The closer they are to Donetsk, the easier that is. So by taking Avdiivka, you're shutting off the Ukrainians from being able to have any artillery based around here and hitting Donetsk. But let's have a look at how far from the center of Donetsk these kind of areas are. So that's 23 kilometers. If you're if you want to hit the center, I mean, that's well within most artillery ranges. Depends what artillery you're using. Obviously, things like Caesars can be placed out here and whatnot. But if you're using basic howitzers, and if you're trying to hit the other side of Donetsk, if you've got targets in, say, Makivka, then they're going to need to be much closer to the front lines there. And this is why this area is quite useful for the Ukrainians. But obviously, these guys with artillery here, they're going to be wanting to hit Russian positions that are attacking them, as opposed to placed on the other side of Donetsk. So either way, it's in the best interest for Russia to do these, to attack, to take Avdiivka. However, this operation will not be easy, let alone quick, as its success depends on the advance from the north of Donetsk airport, with the aim of completely encircling Avdiivka on an axis of advance that is even more heavily fortified than the northern front, with the exception of the town of Novobakhmativka, which remains a headache for the pro-Russian side, unable to take the fortification during this first year of war, and which would allow the fighting to shift to the rural council of Ilyinovskaya. Okay, just to let you know what that means. So this is the airport. North of the airport is Opitny and Vodyanye. That is difficult, and they are struggling to get further than here, although they have moved on. I mean, it was, well, months ago when I started this, it was behind. They didn't. The Russians did not have control of Vodyanye and Opitny, and it was down at the airport. So they have moved, but in sort of 4 months, they've moved this amount, right, give or take, and up in the north, and now they're trying to move to Svierne and further north. Now, in the northern area, they've taken back Mativka, but it seems that that's quite difficult to move on from there. And they obviously want to move on to these more rural areas, but Krasnohorivka and Kamyanka are obviously super important, because if they fall, you're starting to get into the actual northern suburbs of Avdiivka next. And so, again, it's very similar to Bakhmut, really, isn't it? As we come out of Avdiivka, anyway, I just thought that would be an interesting bit of analysis from Syriac maps. We come on to Novomerkalivka and Vuhledar. Let's go on to ISW that say, so as far as Avdiivka, they say a Russian military claim the Russian troops are attacking Svierne and Kamyanka. They've advanced near Pervomaisky and are fighting against stiff Ukrainian defenses within Mariinka, and that's basically all they say about Mariinka. So not a lot fighting in Novomerkalivka as well. Russian mill bloggers amplified footage of personnel of the 155th Naval Infantry Brigade, so those are Marines, claiming that they're still engaged in fierce fighting near Vuhledar, despite recent claims of massive losses suffered to the brigade during attacks on Vuhledar. A Russian mill blogger posted footage reportedly of Russian forces using incendiary ammunition to target Ukrainian positions there. And in fact, I do have that here. So this is the incendiary ammunition being used in Vuhledar. Not illegal. It depends if you signed up to these things or not, but to use it on civilian establishments is not legal. But however, you would argue that Vuhledar is no longer a civilian establishment or settlement. It's broadly speaking just military there. So it's still not nice, but I had a bit of not an argument, discussion about chemical weapons earlier. I might do a segment on whether chemical weapons really are different from getting your face blown off and losing your arms and dying. You know, is it better to be have lung problems for 20 years through chemical weapons and maybe having your skin burnt, but being alive, or is it better to be dead because the conventional munitions blown your head off? And it's like, so we often think chemical weapons are terrible, and they're designed to cause, maybe some of the worst ones are designed to cause pain and suffering. But if you to ask, would you prefer 20 years of pain and suffering, but still some kind of joy in life, maybe, or would you prefer not to exist? These things get quite philosophical. The point is that chemical weapons are bad. Of course, they're bad, but all weapons are bad. And it's like, do we make a false distinction with certain weapons, like cluster bombs and mines and all these things? Yes, when civilians can get affected, there is a bit of a line to be drawn, but otherwise, they're all bloody terrible. Yeah. I forgot to mention there's a HIMARS hit on an ammunition place in Svatovo, right up on the Svatovo line. That was huge. I mean, there's a lot of cooking off and a lot of stuff going on there. But anyway, I forgot. So sorry about that. Right. And then we go on to Zaporizhia and Kherson. Lots of things still going on down there. Strikes happening. So Ukraine's Southern Operational Command reported on March the 10th that Ukrainian forces struck 3 Russian ammunition warehouses, air defenses, and 4 manpower and equipment concentration areas on the east bank of Kherson, and that they struck Russian positions on the Kimban Spit in Mykolaiv Oblast. I've shown you some footage of that. Ukrainian sources implied on March the 11th that Ukrainian forces struck Russian positions near Mariupol. Russian sources have denied this. So Mariupol, indeed Melitopol, and Berdyansk seem to be under regular attack from either HIMARS and or Vilka M or some kind of other long-range missile. And I've said that last few days. That seems to be continuing. There you go. That's broadly as quick as I can be. Goodness me, how quick have I been? Not quick at all. 25 minutes. I'm so sorry. I just talked too much. Anyway, that's a Frontline update for March the 12th. There'll be another Frontline update fairly soon tomorrow. It is what it is. Please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for your support. And please, all the ways you can support the channel are in the description below. Look out for potentially another extra or something, maybe not, I don't know. I might have time to do something little tonight, but it might be just a single discussion point on something. Keep your eyes peeled, but if it doesn't turn up, it's because it's Sunday and I've got things to do. Anyway, take care. All the best.